And I especially touch on the issue of women of color speaking out in feminist ways, because I think that historically we've been silenced through a combination of things like, don't talk about these things because you're going to make us look bad. Don't say these things because they give ammunition to the racists to use against our men. So we've had a double burden to bear, and that is the sexism and the misogyny from within our own culture and globally, generally, the misogyny that is everywhere, but also the racism that we fight also as people of color, as women of color. So I think that seeing each other, seeing ourselves when we look around the world now, all rising up as women and speaking out and saying we will no longer be silent towards the misogyny, but we will also fight that racism, I think is really important. Because I think that's a point that I wanted to make very early on in my book, that I fight the racist right wing outside of my community that want to use my words against my men, and I fight the misogyny of my men. And both of those I will never ally myself with one against the other. So I think that work it was important groundwork to lay for my book. And that was one very important reason to write the book. And I also wanted to build up on the essay that I wrote in Foreign Policy in 2012 called Why Do They Hate Us? Because, as much support that I got, I also got a lot of criticism. And some of the criticism claimed that I was generalizing and that I was just being hysterical and exaggerating. And, I feel very strongly about these issues. I've been a writer for more than 20 years. And so I determined that I would spend more time, I would get more statistics, and I would lay out, this map of misogyny, if you like, in the Middle East and North Africa, so that I could look at each country specifically and focus on the issues that were especially painful for the girls and women in those countries. Because clearly the global gender gap index that the World Bank has come up with shows my part of the world, the Middle East and North Africa, or the Arabic-speaking parts of the Middle East and North Africa, are at the bottom of the global gender index. And then I think also importantly for me was a need to start speaking my story. Because especially after I was assaulted in November of 2011, my two arms were in a cast for 3 months. And as a writer, that makes, my message is words. And I determined when my arms were in a cast that as a way of celebrating survival and as a gift to myself, I would dye my hair bright red and I would get tattoos on both arms as a way of reclaiming my body, because I'd been sexually assaulted as well as physically assaulted and had fractures in my left arm and my right hand. And as a part of that, when I couldn't write for 3 months because my arms were in a cast, I realized that my body became a medium. My body also was a way of sending across this message, hence, the physical change that I imposed on myself. And it was then that I realized that I wasn't just a writer, I was an activist. I had never called myself an activist before, I'd just been a writer. So I thought, in order to be able to write about the social and the sexual revolution, which I believe is essential for the political revolution to succeed, I must be as honest and as open with my own personal story as I have been in my fight against the Mubarak regime, against political Islam, against all the things that I believe contribute to misogyny in the Middle East and North Africa. And so in my book, I take on the idea of being a feminist who wore a headscarf, being a feminist who waited for a very long time to have sex, and how within my feminism I grappled with these two very sensitive issues. Because I believe that as women, if we don't offer these very personal stories that can be very difficult to tell, it's like going out to protest. I don't think it's right to tell someone, go and protest. We can only put ourselves in the protest. And so in order to help other women share their stories, I'm offering mine as a way of saying, I want to listen to yours and amplify yours. Here is mine.